You guys. First and foremost, obviously, Ayesee, I thank you for coming. I appreciate you being here today.
That's my pleasure, man. It's I've listened to your show a time or two. I think you're really doing good work here.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me. So I put together a bunch of questions that I came up with my producer. I've also put together some viewer questions and stuff. So we'll just flow through it and see how it goes and have a good time and chat for a little while. So first one I got for you is you are, and I'm going to add air quotes to this for those of you who are listening on the podcast, the voice of Dota. All right, like people have called him, like they love AC. I love the voice. It's like melting butter. Like you should read Robert Frost poems on YouTube, I think. But I want to ask, do you ever get recognized when you're out in the street? And if you're recognized, do you think it's more for your voice or for your face?
It does happen. It's happened a few times, and every time it happens, it's very surreal. I mean, I've always kind of told people, especially people that I've known since I was growing up and stuff, they see, it's not like I've got a million followers, but, I've got a fair amount of Twitter followers, and they go, wow, you're a celebrity. And it's like, no, not really, man. It's a fun industry and all this. Like, what's it like? And it's very bizarre because when you go to an event like the International or something like that, it's like, yeah, every time I poke my nose out, people want to come say hi. Sometimes they want autographs and pictures, and it is fun. It's a blast. I love meeting fans, but and it does have this kind of like celebrity feel to it. But the moment you step away from that, it completely vanishes. So it's this very strange dichotomy of lifestyles that you live depending on how active you are on LAN and stuff. But I have been recognized just totally on the street. I got recognized in the BART station once. BART's the subway system essentially here in San Francisco, so that's happened to me. I got recognized in a Walgreens by a cashier that was checking me out, and a few other times. And I've also had, it's been about equal. I've had people hear me talk and go, "Wait a minute, is that AC?" And then come over and want to say hello. And then occasionally people see me, and they'll be like, "Oh, are you AC? Yeah, that's awesome," and so on. And again, I love it. I hope that anyone who ever sees me, because I'm the one that's honored by it, man. Like I'm only here because of the support of people like that. But long story short, I think my voice is better than my face. I definitely got a face for radio, but I get by, thankfully. The standards of the Dota 2 community, they're a lot more forgiving of my genetic shortcomings.
They are a fairly forgiving community sometimes, and I'm going to ask you about that in a little while. But first, I want to say that I've heard a lot of interviews about how you got to this point. Right? It's all very interesting, guys. If you want to hear a good interview about kind of AC's development as a caster, etc., there was a one-on-one done by Suns fan that was actually really good. It was a pilot episode of his show. I recommend you listen to that. So I'm going to say that I've heard it, and if you guys want to, you can. I can put up some links on Reddit and stuff for you to find that interview. But I want to ask, what is it like to be the voice? I mean, what's been the best moment, I guess is the best way to ask it, and what's been maybe the worst moment of moving to this point?
Well, it's one. I think I think I'm one of many voices in Dota. I have my fans, but Lord knows Toby, LD, and BTS. Like those guys are amazing. So while it makes me smile to hear people say that, I think I'm one of many voices. Though anyone who considers me the voice of Dota, I'm more than happy and humbled by the moniker. So thanks to the support for that. But it's interesting when you pose the question that way, and I've never been quite asked that way, and that's a good thing. There are highs and there are lows. My best moment was probably when I really think back, and I can pick a few out. I'll just give you a handful. D2L season 4. Even though it's just like anything, it's a live production. Sometimes there are issues. It didn't run perfectly. For the most part, it was a really nice event, but it meant a lot to me because whenever I was first approached by Evil Geniuses shortly following the International 2012, they asked me, one, do you want to cast Dota? Do you want to work with us? And the answer was, of course, yes. And then they pitched a concept, which was the D2L. And as we started work on D2L season 1. They started to talk about the long approach and, building something that was going to be bigger than what we started as. And they asked me to draft up in as many or as few words as I wanted what my general vision was for D2L. Like if I had an unlimited budget and could run an event, how would I want to do it? And D2L Season 4 was essentially that document that I drafted years beforehand. Like so far as getting the Chinese teams involved, live LAN, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So just being there and having a chance to not only commentate some great games on LAN, but to see something that I had dreamed up a long time ago realized in reality was definitely a surreal kind of a moment for me. TI2 was certainly has to rank up there. That was the first live LAN I had ever done for anything esports related. It was the international. So I was overwhelmed from the moment I walked in, but the energy of the place, the way the community welcomed me in for the most part, and just getting to know everyone that I'm now privileged to call my friends. You know, it was the first time I had met people like Toby, first time I met LD, first time I had met Luminous, first time I had met anyone in Dota to begin with. And now, years later, those are people that I'm very proud to call my friends. And, you know, just being a part of that right before Dota's big ascendancy, which really began with 2013 and then hit a crescendo, obviously, at TI4, being a part of the early days, even though not as early as Toby, but still being a part of those early days at TI2 is something that I'll always remember and always keep with me. And, you know, it's a very special story to me in general, just because back at home, my family had always supported me, and, you know, I'd done broadcasting, worked in other forms of media. But even when I said, I'm going to commentate video games for a living, which is not something that you would necessarily expect people to get, my family supported me from day one. And, you know, my parents, who are a little bit older now, you know, both in their mid-60s, actually had a friend come by and show them how to turn the stream on so they could watch me in Seattle. Nice. So that was a very meaningful moment to me that I'll carry with me for the rest of time. But so far as down, if I'm perfectly honest and frank, there was a period after the International 2013 when it just felt like a large contingent of the community turned on me. And I don't know if that was my fault. I don't know if it was, you know, me, it might just being my turn on the hate machine, or if it was a combination of both. And as is usually the truth, it's probably somewhere in the middle. But there was a stretch of months where I continued to commentate, but it got to a point where anytime I saw a Reddit thread or saw anything like that with my name attached to it, I would feel a borderline panic attack.
Yeah. Well, this actually leads me into a question that I think was farther down the list, but I want to follow up on, because you take flame just like everyone else does in the public eye, and it got pretty, like you said, rancid after that TI grouping. I remember reading the Reddits and just being like, "Geez, like this is crazy." It affects everyone differently. So, what is it like when you turn on that Reddit front page and you see a post that has your name in it? You know, how do you deal with that? And I think you were getting to this. What keeps you going? Like, what gets you back in the casting chair the day or the night after that Reddit post goes live?
Well, it's, you know, I don't want to make it more than it was, but I'm not exaggerating when I say that it was something bordering on a panic attack. Wow. And it's not just me. It happens more often than really gets talked about. It's impossible to work in a public eye, and for an extended period of time, every time you see your name, it's not, you know, it's one thing for someone to call you an idiot or someone to call you a moron. You know, these are general terms. But whenever you have people that are being upvoted, sometimes with a lot of numbers, a lot of people agreeing, that are literally picking apart everything about who you are and what you've chosen to do with your life, it's naive to think that anyone, no matter how strong they are, could just shake that off and not have it affect them mentally and emotionally. And I'm no different than that. I mean, I think it's fair to say there was definitely a period of depression involved in all of that, a period of just really trying to find the light at the end of the tunnel. And to this day, I can remember when I remember the sense of relief when it felt like that was finally beginning to break. And I'm not going to get into the particulars of that, but, you know, there was something that had happened and another hate thread popped up, and suddenly, for the first time in what felt like forever, but in reality it had only been a few months, it seemed like the opinion of the people that were commenting went in the other direction and were defending. And things like that, you know, it bounces you back. But to answer the other part of your question, which was how do you keep going, it's you just love what you do. I mean, no matter how hard it was, no matter how low I felt, no matter how difficult it felt at times and at moments, there never was a day when I woke up and I lost sight of the fact that I get to work with the premier esports agency on the planet. I get to talk about and play games all day as a full-time job in in my opinion, the most beautiful city in the world, San Francisco. Yeah. And there are times when that seems like weak medicine, whenever you repeat it to yourself and it doesn't have an effect. But, you know, no matter what, working in a company like Good Game Agency, you know, better known as Evil Geniuses, I'm surrounded by some of the most talented and supportive people that you can imagine, many of which no one will ever know. No one will ever, know their names or follow them on Twitter. But the leadership here is fantastic. The two guys at the top, one of which I work with every single day, his motivation, his ability to cut through the BS, to give me honest critique, to point out where things were right, things were wrong, and to keep me moving in a good direction. And then just the support of the people around me, knowing that the people who were here always supported me no matter what anyone else had to say, no matter if their criticisms were valid or invalid, that they wanted me to succeed, and they actually had my best interest in mind. And that's kind of the one, epiphany is too strong of a word.
Right.
When you actually begin to believe in an emotional way, in a very deep and personal way, that the things that are said about you that are oftentimes negative are not coming from someone who wants you to succeed. So they're going to seize on any chance they can to keep you from succeeding. And then trying to line that up against people who are interested in seeing you do well, both for, the company, but also because they're your friend, outside of this esports life that we live. And seeing the difference and being able to lay those two things next to each other and go, okay, they want me to succeed and they say this, and this happens to be a part of this unpleasant, threat or this unpleasant comment, so that's probably valid. And then everything else begins to separate itself out. And then just focusing on the positives. And goodness knows, even on my worst moments, the life that I'm privileged enough to live is more than good most of the time, even in my darkest moments.
And life lesson, right, guys? Focus on the positive, especially when you get through those really tough spots. And I do want to interrupt very briefly to say, guys, I know you're probably hearing Toffees Jr. in the background. I'm trying to make esports a family event, right? Times are a-changing. And unfortunately, my studio isn't completely soundproofed, so you guys do get to hear him from time to time. And I apologize for that. But I also don't apologize for it because he's going to be in TI-20 as probably one of the best supports out there. So just letting you know, here's your first glimpse of that. And now, I'm interested in a topic that I've heard brought up a few times by you. It's not in the mainstream. I can't find any big posts about it. But a while ago, it came out, or somebody brought to my attention the fact that you don't like the term gamer. And I was curious if you'd expound on kind of what it is about that term that you don't like. Is there something that works better? What is that reasoning?
Well, here's the thing. Like, the esports communities are very much their own thing. We're all gamers, without a doubt. And there's a very deep rabbit hole that I'm not going to take the time to try to go down right now regarding some of the things that are going on in the spheres of more traditional gaming. And I don't necessarily mean developers, media and backlash and all of this. The long and the short of it is that it's not that I don't like the term gamer. I don't like in many ways the fact that people that love what we love, that are esports aficionados, that make this not just a part of their daily life, but honestly, it reaches a point where it becomes a lifestyle.
Right.
This feeling of inferiority, this idea that gamers are still this niche crowd that is maligned and basically the butt of a joke that arguably they were in around 1995, maybe even the early 2000s. I don't like that gamers put themselves in that situation. I don't like that when we discuss issues like how we grow our industry, that we're automatically the instinct seems to be to put ourselves into this position of having to apologize or having to assume that no one's going to get it. It's just not true, man. Whenever I first started working in esports, wasn't that long ago. It was back in late 2010, early 2011, and even then, whenever I explained what I did, people seemed to get it. They weren't aware of it. They had no idea that the general response was, I had no idea that there was a community that size. I had no idea. And then granted, this is back in the Justin TV days, right? Way before Twitch was even a concept. But since Twitch has become what Twitch is and what Twitch is likely to continue to be for a long time, with events like LCS for League of Legends, of course, the International for Dota 2, we see Counter-Strike that is really picking up a ton of pace. They're like the initiatives, the hard work that's been laid has already taken us to a mainstream to a degree. I mean, whenever you talk about mainstream, I think everyone I shouldn't say everyone, it's not fair. I feel like this sort of mindset comes from those who think of mainstream as only being as popular as the NFL, or or only being as well known and ubiquitous as J-Lo or Iggy or whatever else. And that's an impossible standard to hold yourself to, because those are industries that have been around for much longer than esports could even dream of having the time to penetrate not just a market, but to penetrate a culture at the same time. So the idea that we can't be mainstream unless, when we tell people what we do, they automatically understand and know what we do, like that's just an unfortunate position to put ourselves in. We should be proud of what we've built, and we should be like, and just to be honest, I don't think that the mindset that seems to be assumed is there, the whole, oh, you're a gamer, my kid does that, that kind of thing. I don't think that is nearly as common as it once was, and I would even say the vast majority of people, I mean, granted, up to a certain age, I mean, you get into the 55, 60 demographic, it's going to be a little different, but that's true of everything. That's true of, like, hell, it wasn't that long ago, and to an extent it is now, of skateboarding. And is there anything more mainstream than skateboard culture right now? Like, we are on the ascendant, and I don't think that we, as whatever you want to choose to call us, gamers or anything else, we should not be putting ourselves in assuming that we're smaller or less significant than we are. We are a major demographic. We're a demographic that major companies like Monster Energy, Red Bull, and not, these companies that sell to a wide range, not just your manufacturers of mice and keyboards. Yes, they're still there. But, I mean, look at Evil Geniuses. The team had a sponsorship from T-Mobile at TI4. Like, that's as mainstream as it gets. So we're there. So we need to step away from the idea of, oh, we're still fighting this fight. We're still considered nerds in the basement. Yeah, every now once in a while you might meet someone that thinks that way. For the most part, though, gaming is big, and more people now are gamers than aren't, especially compared to, say, five years ago, especially 10 years ago.
And, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, some of my fans know this. I'm 31. I think I rank as one of the older people in Dota right now, as far as doing shows and creating content is concerned. But I will say this. When I started gaming, back when EverQuest came out, and got my first job for a Voodoo graphics card and told people I'm working so I can pursue gaming, they looked at me crazy. But when I went out and got a waiting tables job and said, I'm waiting tables so I can be an actor, they said, oh, that makes sense. So, it's one of those things where I think that we are a really burgeoning business, a new avenue of sports. And you know what? The NFL was once Leatherhead. So things change, and I see an upswing, and I think you're absolutely right. It looks like the future. So I'm going to end up with one more serious question that we wanted to ask you, and then we'll do a couple lighthearted ones, get to some viewer things, and then close this bad boy out. You seem like a guy who likes a lot of different projects, Ayesee. You like things on your plate. You like new challenges. So let me ask you, are you Dota or bust from now on? Or are there other projects in your queue that maybe you're going to run alongside of this Dota thing?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I actually had a meeting regarding something along those lines literally earlier today, prior to coming on your show. Unfortunately, I can't really get into details yet, as we're still in the development stages. Dota is and will always be my first love and my true love. And that's for a multitude of reasons. One, it's just my favorite game, and I can't imagine it's not going to be my favorite game at any point in history. But whenever I got into esports, what I wanted more than anything wasn't to be, I didn't want to be a typical esports caster. I wanted to be your Marv Albert of esports. I wanted to be someone who was able and had the knowledge and the connections and the ability to cast as many things as I possibly could, because I love gaming in general. I love esports in general. I'm not just a Dota fan. I'm first and foremost a Dota fan. But I love energy. I love hype. I love walking into a venue and seeing, be it 100 people, be it 100,000 people, or, I guess more realistically, the 10,000 or 20,000 that were at Key Arena over the summer. I love walking in and just breathing in the electricity, the anticipation that comes with that environment. And more than anything, I love strapping on a microphone or putting one in front of me and giving a voice to all of that electricity and that excitement and anticipation. That's what I want to do. And I want to do it with Dota, but I want to do it with other things as well. And over the next, say the end of 2014, looking at the 2015, I will be doing, if all goes to plan, I will be part of a very big deal regarding another game and regarding a community that's heavily on the upswing right now.
Interesting. Can you tell us if it's another MOBA or if it's something completely different that we're not even?
It's a classic genre, not a MOBA. I'll say that much.
This is exciting. So, guys, I didn't get to break the news, but I do get to show you that Ayesee's got some things on his hot plate, and it should be a lot of fun to see. So let's move into a few things that are a little more entertaining. First, we'll go into some viewer questions, and I want to say that a viewer told me to ask this last night and made me laugh, so I figure I'll ask it. And it's, if your casting voice were to wear underwear, would it be a boxer man or a briefs man?
I feel like right. I feel yeah. It's just like I'm trying to think of something really clever, but my instinct is to say that. Like I've never worn. I think it would wear boxer briefs. It would give you the secure feeling, the nice tight feeling that you want without being constraining, without making you feel imprisoned. And that's what I try to do with my voice. I want to deliver a nice tight performance, but also allow you to feel free to express yourself.
That worked out way better than I hoped it would. So that is a great answer. Let's ask a couple more that are maybe a little more serious down the line from some of the fans out there. A good one that just came in over Reddit was, what advice, and just a simple thing that you could say to a rising organization in a burgeoning market like, say, South America or Central America? What advice would you give, whether it's a tournament organization, a casting group, a group of guys from that region that's only now sort of coming of age?
My go-to for this, and not just because it's standard, but because literally it was my mantra for 2 years when I was trying so hard to be able to make this a full-time job. Focus on the work. It sounds simple, but what tends to happen with a lot of people who have the passion and the drive, but the connections or have the experience to work in this industry, is it's scary. It's hard to put yourself out there on a day-to-day basis. It's hard to cold call and to ask people, how you can be a part of them, and so on, and how you can do these things. So what tends to happen is people run into this brick wall, is what it feels like. Yeah. And then they start to talk themselves out of working by focusing on things that don't matter, focusing on things like, my microphone's not good enough, my internet connection could be better, the only teams I can get for this little tournament are teams nobody cares to watch. So I don't want to do that. I have to have at least one tier 1 or at least tier 2 team before I'm willing to do this. And you start to, and I'm not trying to say it's pejorative. I'm saying it's natural. Like, I went through this too, where, the idea of throwing yourself into work with no guarantee of return, when you feel like you're beating your head against a brick wall sometimes, it's really easy to talk yourself out of it and to slowly let your work ethic slide and to slowly let other things in life take over, and then you don't feel as bad because you didn't necessarily abandon it. You just feel like you never could quite break through. Yeah. If you focus on the work every day, and what I mean by that is, it doesn't matter if you have anything to do that day. If you don't figure out why you don't have anything to do that day. There are a myriad of organizations who want nothing more than volunteer talent, but more importantly, volunteer talent that's consistent. Like, I don't know a single person in esports. Like, literally, I'm looking out over the office right now. I don't think there's anyone in this office right this second who in one way, shape, or form did not get their start in this industry by volunteering. And that goes all the way, by the way, to our CEO. That goes all the way to him. So, yeah, I'm talking everyone at some point in this office contacted someone else in another organization and said, hey, I would like to help, but you don't have to pay me. Tell me what I can do.
Yep.
And by doing that, you earn a reputation, you build your network, you build connections. And in this industry in particular, this is an industry where everyone thinks they want to work in it, but when they start working in it, very few actually want to work in this industry.
Right.
Like, it's a lot of fun, there's a lot of gaming, there's a whole lot of nerd talk, and it's a blast, but there's a lot of hard work, largely thankless, and there's a whole lot of hate that you got to deal with, and not a whole lot of money to go around. So when you first get started, it's going to be for little to no pay, but if you're willing to let your passion drive you, focus on the work, find every way you can to be useful to anyone who will even give you the time of day, you will have a major chance to break in, I promise.
It seems like a lot like radio in that way, from my experience with radio. So
Go ahead. I was in radio too, so I think you have a fantastic voice. But yeah, honestly, that's why the industries seem to overlap to me as well. So
Yeah, it's a really comfortable overlap. But that answer actually answers Rupture's question, as well as a bunch of Reddit questions that came in that said, what are the one thing you'd say to a caster trying to break through? Another question that is you sort of covered, but just give me, let's do this in 2 sentences and see if we can. Is I had a couple of folks post and say, do you think it's likely that we'll see new casting groups popping up, or is the market share simply not there?
I actually read this. I saw this whenever it came in. Is it possible? Yes, but here's the issue. It's not that there's too much talent. That's not the truth. It's not that there's no talent that's coming up. That's not the truth either. The truth of the matter is the way you get noticed in professional Dota right now is to cast very, very good teams. Right. Those teams have a finite number of hours in a given day they can play in tournaments. And there are a very large number of tournaments that are going to be going on for the foreseeable future. D2L, D2CL, Star Ladder, Summit, ESL qualifiers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So these teams have reached a point where they are turning down good prize pools and good tournaments simply because they don't have the time. Now, the way this plays into that is now you have these tournaments that all of the teams are still agreeing to play in, and they literally don't have time to play in anything else for the most part. And those other tournaments, the ones that are trying to come up, they need that talent, but they don't have the time. They don't have the time to play. So in terms of where we are casting-wise, there's always going to be a certain level of turnover. There's always going to be someone or something that's coming up and earning themselves a reputation. There's always going to be room for growth. But the simple truth of the matter is the teams don't have enough time. The tournaments who do have a demand and a command of the team's time now, they're usually pretty set in their casting combinations. It's usually me or BTS or Toby, and that's kind of just where things are right now. Cracking into that generally you're going to have to work with one of the existing organizations to be able to crack into that upper echelon, I think.
Absolutely.
And that's, so to answer the question, is it possible? Yes. What will there be? Potentially, but right now the issue again is that the tournaments are locked into their casting groups. The tournaments have demand on the team's time, and without the teams, smaller tournaments and smaller casters don't get noticed.
Absolutely. And I'm going to add to that, guys, and I am not famous or anything, but I think if you want that breakthrough, something that is available right now, and maybe Ayesee, you can agree with me or tell me if I'm completely wrong here, but is make content. We are part of a community that's expanding, and there's not enough content makers to keep everyone happy and everyone busy. So casting is great, but I mean, look at Sir Action Slacks. He started making some interesting content, and literally 6 months later, he's doing interviews at ESL New York. So get out there, have an idea, don't be scared of it. I promise.
Flags. Look where he came from. Like, he came from a funny video everyone thought was funny. Do you know what separates people like Sir Action Slacks and Pyrium Flax, though? Every week, there's some new content up, some great guide that someone makes to some esoteric way to play a hero or something like that. But then that person doesn't make another video. If ever, they'll make it months later. If you want your best chance to break in and become a known name right now in Dota in particular, make content, but more importantly, make it frequently. Make 2 videos a week if you can, 3 videos a week. That's how Pyrion got noticed. The constant appearance of Sir Action Slacks, that's how he got noticed, and he went to TI and did great content there as well. And again, this comes back to what I was saying before. Focus on the work. The audience will be there. You'll find your audience. Just do the work and do it consistently and frequently, and you will get noticed.
Absolutely. I agree 100%, and I will be the first person in line listening. I assure you of that. So we're almost out of time, but before, this is something that I really wanted to do, because once upon a time, Ayesee, before you were the big voice of Dota, the man who was famous, you were breaking into the scene, you used to do this thing where you would read the names of viewers after a game. And obviously, we can't do it when there's 80,000 viewers watching a match. But what I did do is I had a couple of folks tweet at us, give us their names who are fans, and ask to have their names read. So I sent you the list. There's only 6 people on it because I wanted to keep it short and sweet. But for old time's sake, would you mind reading some fan names for us?
I absolutely will. I got to think back. It's been so long. What was it I used to say? Special thanks to everyone, including but not limited to Bill Zamoka, Gontriel. I'm going to guess I got that right. That was the guy who said he hoped I got it right. Gurg in the house. What is hip? Once shout out, you got a Gurg. Alex Alvarez, Snuggies, Roxas146. Thank you all so very much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for tuning into the broadcast. We hope to see you back next time around.
Absolutely beautiful. And before I sign out, I want to tell you that last name on the list, Roxas146, asked me to tell you personally that you are the reason he started playing the game and fell in love with it. Your commentary inspired him, and Roxas146 wanted to thank you for everything you've done for him in his Dota career.
That is by far whenever you meet people at LANs or people tweet at you, you get hate, but you also get good. And that's something I probably should have iterated much earlier in the interview, was just how much good I get as well and how thankful I am for all of it. But that sentiment is always the one that means the most to me. That's what I want it to be. Some casters and some people who get into the scene, they want to teach people Dota. They want to succeed in terms of winning or in terms, if they're players or whatever. My goal was always to be a gateway. That's what I mean when I say I want to be the Marv Albert. I want to be a person that is able to reach people who maybe are listening for the first time. And so thank you, Roxas146, and I guarantee you've done more for me than I can ever do for you. Because of people like you, I get to be here. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for that.
Awesome. Well, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being on the show today, Ayesee. I know that you took some time out of a busy day to help me out, and I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate the fans who are listening. If you're on the podcast, same thing that was just said. You're what makes it possible, guys. It's been a wonderful ride so far. The show will be live, continuing indefinitely, as long as you're okay with the baby crying once in a while. So hopefully you enjoyed the interview. I'll have this on YouTube separately from everything else. And as always, guys, Toffees out.